The night shift at Outpost Prometheus was always quiet. The monitoring station floated in the dark space beyond Neptune, far from Earth's busy cities and crowded orbital platforms. Most nights, the only sounds were the soft hum of computers and the occasional beep of routine system checks. Hannah sat at her console, drinking cold coffee and watching the screens. She'd been a communications officer for 3 years now, and in all that time, nothing interesting had ever happened. Deep space was empty and silent. That's what everyone said. That's what everyone believed. Then her screen lit up with a signal she had never seen before. At first, Hannah thought it was a malfunction. The signal was weak and broken, coming from somewhere beyond the solar system. She ran the diagnostics twice, then 3 times. The computer confirmed it. This was real. This was a message from something far away in the stars. Her hands shook as she began the decoding process. The signal wasn't in any Earth language. It wasn't even close to any human communication system, but there were patterns in it. Mathematical sequences that any intelligent species would recognize. Universal constants. Prime numbers. The building blocks of meaning. It took Hannah 6 hours to build a basic translation matrix. By the time she finished, the sun was rising on Earth, though out here beyond Neptune, everything was always dark. She stared at the translated message on her screen, reading it over and over, unable to believe what she was seeing. The message was a distress call, a desperate plea for help from a species called the Velothi. Their world, Velara Prime, was under attack. A massive fleet had arrived without warning and begun destroying everything. Cities were burning. Millions were dead. The survivors were hiding underground, and they were running out of time. The message wasn't directed at Earth. It wasn't directed at anyone specific. The Velothi were screaming into the void, hoping someone, anyone, would hear them and come to help. They had no reason to expect an answer. They just had nowhere else to turn. Hannah immediately forwarded the message to Earth Command. Within 2 hours, she received orders to report to the military headquarters in Geneva. Within 6 hours, she was sitting in a room with 30 admirals, generals, and government officials, all arguing about what to do. Most of them wanted to ignore the message. Earth had only just begun exploring beyond its own solar system. Humanity had basic faster-than-light travel, but their ships were small and their weapons were primitive compared to what must be out there. Getting involved in an alien war seemed like suicide. But there were others who disagreed. They argued that if humanity ignored this cry for help, they would be no better than the monsters who were attacking the Velothi. They said that first contact shouldn't be about fear and isolation. It should be about showing the galaxy who humanity really was. The debate went on for hours. Hannah sat quietly in the corner, listening to powerful people decide the fate of a world they had never seen. She thought about the message, about the desperation in those mathematical patterns. Someone out there was dying, and they had asked for help. Finally, Admiral Soman stood up. She was the head of the United Earth Space Force, a woman who had fought in the corporate wars and survived things that would have broken lesser people. She looked around the room and said something that would change human history forever. "We're going to help them," Admiral Soman announced. "Not because it's smart or safe. Not because we'll gain anything from it. We're going to help them because they asked and because we can. If humanity won't stand up for strangers in need, then we don't deserve to call ourselves civilized." The decision was made. Earth would send a fleet to Velara Prime. It wouldn't be a large fleet because Earth didn't have many warships to spare. 12 vessels would make the journey. It wasn't much, but it was everything humanity could send without leaving Earth defenseless. Captain Doyen was chosen to lead the mission. He was young for a captain, only 35, but he had proven himself during the Mars Rebellion. He was smart, calm under pressure, and most importantly, he believed in the mission. When Admiral Soman asked him if he would go, he didn't hesitate. The fleet assembled quickly. The flagship was the UESF Retribution, a heavy cruiser that was already showing its age. Alongside it came 11 other ships, 5 frigates, 4 destroyers, and 2 supply vessels. By galactic standards, it was probably a pathetic force, but it was Earth's force, and every man and woman aboard had volunteered. Lieutenant Mina was one of those volunteers. She was the weapons officer on the Retribution, responsible for every missile, railgun, and defensive system on the ship. She had joined the military 5 years ago after pirates killed her younger brother during a raid on a mining colony. She knew what it felt like to be helpless, to need help that never came. She wasn't going to let that happen to someone else. Sergeant Taeyang was another volunteer. He was a Marine, a soldier who would lead boarding parties and ground operations if needed. He had a wife and 2 children back on Earth, and they begged him not to go. But Taiyang told them that he had to. If he didn't stand up for people who needed help, what kind of example would he be setting for his kids? There were thousands of others like them aboard the fleet. Engineers, doctors, pilots, soldiers. All of them knew the odds. All of them knew they might not come home. But they also knew that someone had to answer that call for help, and they were proud to be the ones doing it. The journey to Valara Prime would take 3 weeks using Earth's FTL drives. During that time, the crews trained constantly, preparing for a battle against an enemy they knew nothing about. They studied the limited information in the Velothi distress signal, trying to understand what they would be facing. What they learned wasn't encouraging. The attackers were called the Krethic Empire. According to the fragmented data in the message, the Krethic had conquered dozens of star systems. They had overwhelming military power and showed no mercy to anyone who resisted them. The Velothi never stood a chance. Captain Doyen spent his nights in his quarters, staring at star charts and wondering if he was leading his people to their deaths. He knew the mission was dangerous. He knew they were probably outgunned and outnumbered. But he also knew that doing nothing would be worse than any military defeat. On the 20th day of the journey, Doyen gathered all the ship captains for a final meeting. He looked at each of them through the video screens and spoke plainly. "In 3 days we'll arrive at Valara Prime," he said. "We don't know what we'll find there. We don't know if we'll win. But I know this, we're going to try. We're going to fight for people we've never met, for a world we've never seen, because that's what humans do. We help, we protect. We stand up when everyone else looks away." The other captains nodded. There was no more debate, no more doubt. They had made their choice weeks ago. Now it was time to see it through. As the fleet dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Valara system, alarms immediately started blaring. Sensors detected massive energy signatures ahead, debris fields, destroyed ships, and a fleet of 40 warships surrounding a burning planet. Lieutenant Mina looked at her tactical display and felt her stomach drop. 40 against 12. Those were impossible odds. But when she looked at Captain Doyen, he was calm. He opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, battle stations," he ordered. We didn't come all this way to turn back now. The impossible battle was about to begin. The view on the main screen made everyone on the bridge of the Retribution fall silent. Valara Prime hung in space ahead of them, and it was dying. Massive fires burned across 3 continents. Orbital stations that once housed millions of Velothi now drifted as twisted wreckage. Civilian transport ships floated dead in space, their hulls torn open by weapons fire, and surrounding it all was the Krethic blockade fleet, 40 warships, each one larger than anything Earth had ever built. Their dark hulls seemed to absorb light, and their weapons glowed with barely contained energy. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. Captain Doyen stood at the center of the bridge, his face carved from stone. He had expected a battle, but this was worse than his darkest imaginings. The Krethic weren't just attacking the Velothi. They were exterminating them. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," said the communications officer. "It's from the surface. The Velothi." "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was weak and filled with static, but the desperation in it was clear. "Unknown vessels. This is Elder Priest Hyan of Valara Prime. We received your approach signatures. Please, you must leave the system immediately. The Krethic will destroy you. We are grateful you came, but you cannot help us. Save yourselves." Lieutenant Mina looked up from her weapons console. "Captain, the Velothi don't even know who we are." "We're not on any of their star charts," Doyun nodded slowly. The Velothi had sent their distress call blindly into space, never expecting primitive Earth to be the one to answer. Now they were trying to save their saviors from certain death. It would have been touching if it wasn't so heartbreaking. "Open a channel to the Velothi," Doyun ordered. "Elder Hyun, this is Captain Doyen of Earth. We received your call for help. We're not leaving." There was a long pause. Then Hyan's voice came back, confused and afraid. "Earth, we do not know this world. Please, you do not understand what you face. The Krethic Empire has conquered 50 systems. They have never been defeated. Your sacrifice will mean nothing." "Then we'll be the first," Doyen replied simply. He closed the channel to the Velothi and opened a new one, broadcasting to the Krethic fleet. "Krethic vessels, this is the United Earth Space Force. You are in violation of basic sentient rights. Cease your attack on Valara Prime and withdraw immediately. This is your only warning." On the bridge, several crew members exchanged nervous glances. Warning a fleet of 40 warships when you only had 12 seemed insane. But Doyen's voice was steady and cold. He meant every word. The response came quickly. A massive holographic image appeared on the main screen, showing a Krethic commander. The alien was tall and covered in thick scales with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like hot coals. When it spoke, its voice was filled with contempt. I am Commander Velmoth of the Krethic Imperial Fleet. You dare to threaten us, primitive species? We have reduced hundreds of worlds to ash. Your tiny fleet is beneath our notice. The commander made a gesture that might have been laughter. Surrender now and we will make your deaths quick. Doyen's expression didn't change. We gave you a chance. You refused. Don't say we didn't warn you. He closed the channel and turned to Lieutenant Mina. All weapons free. Target their command ship. Fire everything we have. The Retribution shuddered as its railguns opened fire. Solid metal slugs, accelerated to a fraction of light speed, crossed the distance in seconds. The Krethic commander's ship, confident in its shields, didn't even try to evade. The shields flared bright blue as they absorbed the impact. Then the nuclear missiles arrived. Dozens of them. Old Earth weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. They detonated against the shields in a chain reaction of atomic fire. The shields held, but they flickered. They weakened. All ships, focus fire, Doyen commanded. The entire Earth fleet opened up at once. Railgun rounds, missiles, laser batteries, everything humanity had created for war was thrown at the Krethic command ship. The shields failed. Without that protection, the command ship's hull was exposed to the storm of metal and fire. Explosions ripped across its surface. Atmosphere vented into space. The massive vessel began to list to one side, its engines sputtering. On the bridge of the Retribution, a cheer went up. They had hurt the enemy. They had proven that humanity could fight back. But there were still 39 other Krethic ships, and now they were angry. The Krethic fleet surged forward like a wave of darkness. Their plasma cannons lit up space with green fire. Energy beams lanced out, moving at light speed and impossible to dodge. The human fleet scattered, their smaller ships using speed and maneuverability to survive. The destroyer Defiant took a direct hit from a plasma cannon. Its shields, weaker than the Krethic versions, collapsed immediately. The plasma burned through the hull like paper, and the ship exploded in a ball of white fire. 300 crew members died in an instant. Defiant is gone, reported the tactical officer, his voice shaking. Fury is heavily damaged. They're venting atmosphere on 3 decks. Doyen's jaw tightened. They were losing people. Good people who had volunteered to help strangers. But retreating now would mean their deaths meant nothing. All ships implement pattern Delta. Make them chase us through the debris fields. Use the wreckage as cover and hit them with everything you have. The human fleet dove into the graveyard of destroyed Velothi ships and stations. The Krethic followed, their larger vessels less able to navigate the tight spaces. It was like watching sharks chase smaller fish through a coral reef. Lieutenant Mina worked frantically at her console, coordinating the weapons fire of multiple ships. Captain, I have an idea. The Krethic ships are large and heavily armored, but their maneuvering thrusters are exposed. If we can take those out, they'll be sitting ducks. Do it! Mina transmitted targeting data to the fleet. The human ships changed their attack pattern, focusing on precision strikes rather than overwhelming firepower. Railgun rounds punched through thruster assemblies. Missiles curved around enemy hulls to hit vulnerable points. It was surgical and ruthless. 3 Krethic cruisers lost power and began drifting, unable to control their movement. Another took critical damage to its reactor and exploded from within. The Krethic fleet was starting to realize that the humans weren't fighting like civilized species. They were fighting like something wild and desperate. Sergeant Taeyang and his Marines were preparing for something even more insane. Their transport ship, the Hammer, swooped close to a disabled Krethic cruiser. Magnetic clamps latched onto the enemy hull and cutting torches began burning through the armor. Breaching now, Taeyang reported over the comm. All Marines with me! They poured into the Krethic ship like an infection. The aliens inside were unprepared for boarding actions. In their centuries of conquest, no one had ever been crazy enough to try to capture their ships. The Krethic Empire fought with honor and established rules of warfare. Humanity had no such concerns. Taeyang's Marines used shotguns, grenades, and pure aggression to fight through the corridors. The Krethic were stronger and had better armor, but the humans were faster and more vicious. Within 20 minutes, Taeyang's team had reached the bridge and taken control of the ship's weapon systems. "Captain Doyen, this is Sergeant Taeyang. We've captured the cruiser, turning its weapons on the enemy fleet now." The Krethik ship opened fire on its own allies. The confusion this caused rippled through the enemy formation. Ships turned on each other, unsure which vessels were still under friendly control. The human fleet pressed the advantage, hitting them from multiple angles. Commander Velmoth watched his perfect formation fall apart, his eyes wide with disbelief. These primitives were supposed to be easy prey. They were supposed to surrender or die quickly. Instead, they were tearing his fleet to pieces using tactics that no civilized species would ever employ. "All ships, full retreat," Velmoth finally ordered. "Fall back to the outer system. We will regroup and return with reinforcements." The Krethik fleet began to withdraw, their faster-than-light engines charging. They left behind 6 destroyed ships and 4 captured ones. The human fleet didn't pursue. They couldn't. 4 of their ships were gone and the rest were badly damaged. The Retribution had hull breaches on 7 decks and its main reactor was operating at 60% capacity. But they had won. Against all odds, 12 human ships had driven off 40 Krethik vessels. The impossible had happened. On Valara Prime, in the underground shelters where the last Velothi survivors huddled, Elder Priest Hyan watched the battle through damaged sensors. Tears streamed down his face. Strangers from a world he had never heard of had come to save his people. They had bled and died for Velothi they would never meet. He opened a communication channel to the human fleet. "Captain Doyen, I do not have words sufficient to thank you. You saved us when the entire galaxy abandoned us. Earth will forever be remembered by the Velothi people." Doyen looked at the image of the alien priest on his screen. Hyan's species was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. He looked gentle and kind. Nothing like a warrior. He looked like someone worth saving. "We did what anyone should have done, Elder Hyan. Now let's make sure your people survive. The Krethik will be back." The aftermath of the battle was worse than the fighting itself. Captain Doyen walked through the corridors of the Retribution, stepping over damaged panels and avoiding exposed wiring. The ship smelled like burned metal and chemicals from the fire suppression systems. Every few meters he saw repair teams working frantically to fix critical systems. In the medical bay, Dr. Yunji was trying to save as many wounded as possible. Beds lined both sides of the room and even the floor had injured crew members lying on stretchers. Some had burns from plasma fire. Others had broken bones from explosive decompression. A few had injuries so severe that Unji could only give them something for the pain and hold their hands as they died. "How many?" Doyen asked quietly. Unji looked up from the soldier she was treating. Her scrubs were covered in blood and her eyes were red from exhaustion. 2,347 dead across the fleet. Another 800 wounded. The Defiant, the Courage, the Valiant, and the Swift are completely destroyed. The Fury is barely holding together. Doyen felt each number like a physical blow. Over 2,000 people had died following his orders. Men and women with families back home. People who had trusted him to lead them. "They volunteered," Yunji said softly, seeing the pain on his face. "Every single one of them knew what they were risking. They came anyway. That doesn't make it easier." "No, it doesn't, but it makes it worth it." Doyen left the medical bay and made his way to the observation deck. Through the windows he could see Valara Prime slowly rotating below. Fires still burned on the surface, but Velothi rescue teams were already emerging from the underground shelters. They were alive because of what humanity had done. The door opened behind him and Lieutenant Mina entered. She had a bandage wrapped around her left arm where shrapnel had caught her during the battle, but she was still at her post. She stood beside Doyen and looked out at the planet. "We're receiving shuttle requests from the surface," she said. "The Velothi want to meet us in person. Elder Hyan is asking permission to come aboard. Grant it. And arrange for a delegation of our people to visit the surface. It's time we actually met the people we came to save." 3 hours later, Elder Priest Hyan stepped off a Velothi shuttle and into the landing bay of the Retribution. He was accompanied by several other Velothi, including scientists, engineers, and government officials. They all stared in wonder at the human ship, taking in every detail. Hyan himself was tall, nearly 7 feet, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the light. His face was gentle, with large dark eyes that showed deep intelligence and compassion. When he saw Captain Doyen waiting for him, Hyan did something unexpected. He knelt down, pressing his forehead to the deck. "Please stand up," Doyen said, uncomfortable with the display. "There's no need for that." Hyun rose slowly, and Doyen could see tears running down the alien's face. "Captain Doyen, I must tell you what you have done. The Velothi are a peaceful people. We have not fought a war in 300 cycles. When the Krethik came, we had no defense. Our fleet was destroyed in hours. Our people were hunted like animals. We sent our distress call to the stars, but we did not truly expect anyone to answer." "You asked for help," Doyen said simply. "That was enough. But why?" Hyun's voice was filled with genuine confusion. "We are strangers to you. Our worlds have never met. You risked your lives, your ships, your people for beings you did not know. This is not logical. This is not how the galaxy works." Lieutenant Mina, standing beside her captain, spoke up. "Maybe that's what's wrong with the galaxy. When someone asks for help, you help them. It's that simple." Hyun looked at her, then back at Doyen. "Your species is very strange, and very, very brave." Over the following days, the humans and Velothi began to work together. Velothi engineers came aboard the damaged human ships, offering their advanced technology to help with repairs. In exchange, human technicians studied Velothi systems, learning about energy shields and more efficient FTL drives. But more than just technology was shared. The two species began to understand each other. Private Jiwoo was part of a marine unit sent to the surface to help with rescue operations. She spent her days digging through collapsed buildings searching for survivors. On the third day, she found a group of Velothi children hiding in a basement. They were terrified, having watched their parents die in the attacks. Jiwoo didn't speak their language and they didn't speak hers. But she sat with them, sharing her ration bars and showing them pictures of her own little sister back on Earth. She made them laugh by doing silly faces and telling jokes they couldn't understand. When the Velothi rescue workers finally arrived, the children didn't want to leave her. One little Velothi girl, who couldn't have been more than 6 years old, hugged Jiwoo tightly and said something in her language. A translator device picked it up. "Thank you for not letting us be alone." Jiwoo held the child and cried. She thought about all the human soldiers who had died to save these kids. It had been worth it. Every single loss had been worth it. Sergeant Taeyang was working with Velothi security forces, teaching them basic combat tactics. The Velothi were natural scientists and philosophers, not warriors. The idea of hurting another living being was deeply disturbing to them. But they understood now that sometimes violence was necessary to protect the innocent. "Show me again how your species fights," one Velothi student asked. His name was Korin, and he had lost his entire family to the Krethik attacks. Taeyang demonstrated a disarming technique, moving slowly so Korin could follow. "The key is to be faster and smarter than your enemy. Your people are taller and have better technology. Use that, but also be willing to do whatever it takes to win. The Krethik fight with rules and honor. We don't. Is that not wrong?" Korin asked. "To fight without honor? There's no honor in conquest and murder," Taeyang replied. The Krethik gave up any claim to honor when they started killing civilians. When you're fighting to protect your people, there are no rules. There's only victory or death. Back on the Retribution, Captain Doyen was in a conference with Admiral Soman via long-range communication. The Admiral's face on the screen looked grave. "The entire galaxy is talking about the Battle of Valara Prime," Soman said. "We've intercepted communications from dozens of species. Some are impressed, some are terrified, and the Krethik Empire is furious. Our intelligence suggests they're assembling a massive fleet to finish what they started. How long do we have? 2 weeks, maybe 3? Doyen, they're sending everything they have. We estimate over 200 ships. Earth is sending reinforcements, but they won't arrive for at least 10 days. You need to be ready." "We'll be ready," Doyen said with more confidence than he felt. That night, Doyen stood on the observation deck again, watching repair crews work on the damaged hull outside. Lieutenant Mina found him there, as she often did. They had developed a quiet friendship during the mission, built on mutual respect and shared burden. "Do you think we can win against 200 ships?" Mina asked. "I don't know, but I know we have to try. The Velothi are counting on us. Earth is counting on us. If we run now, everything we sacrificed was for nothing." "My brother died because no one came to help," Mina said quietly. "Pirates attacked his colony, and by the time help arrived, everyone was dead. I promised myself that I would never let that happen to anyone else if I could stop it." That's why I'm here. What was his name? Sunho, he was 19. He wanted to be a teacher. Mina wiped her eyes. I think he would be proud of what we're doing here. I'm sure he would be. Down on Valara Prime, Elder Hyan gathered the surviving Velothi leaders. They met in a damaged council chamber, the ceiling open to the sky above. He told them about the humans, about their sacrifice, about Earth's promise to stand with them against the coming storm. The humans have given us a gift beyond measure, Hyan said. They have shown us that in this cold, dark galaxy there are still species who care about justice and compassion. They have lost thousands of their people to save millions of ours. We owe them a debt that can never be fully repaid. What can we do? Asked one of the counselors. We have no military. Our fleet is destroyed. How can we help them when the Krethic return? We can stand with them, Hyun replied. We can fight alongside them. We can show them that their sacrifice inspired us to be better, to be braver. The humans say that when someone asks for help, you help them. Well, they need help now. It's our turn to answer. The council agreed unanimously. The Velothi would fight. For the first time in 3 centuries, they would go to war. Not for conquest or glory, but for their new friends from Earth. The galaxy was about to learn a hard lesson. When you threaten one human, you might face a fleet. But when you threaten the friends of humanity, you face something far more dangerous. You face humans who have something to protect. The Krethic armada arrived 3 weeks after their first defeat, and it blotted out the stars. 217 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Valara system. Each one was massive, bristling with weapons and carrying enough firepower to burn an entire planet. At the center of the formation was the supreme flagship Dominion, a ship so large it had its own gravity. Supreme Admiral Krentak stood on the bridge of the Dominion, his forearms crossed as he surveyed the tactical display. He was ancient by Krethic standards, having led campaigns for 60 cycles. He had never lost a battle. He had never retreated, and he was not about to let some primitive species ruin his perfect record. Scan the system, he ordered. Find the human fleet and destroy them. Then burn Valara Prime to ash. Leave nothing alive. This will be a lesson to the entire galaxy about what happens when you defy the Krethic Empire. The tactical officer worked his console, then looked up in confusion. Supreme Admiral, we're detecting 45 human vessels in the system. They've taken defensive positions around the planet. Krentak's eyes narrowed. 45? They've received reinforcements. Yes, sir, including one vessel 3 times larger than their previous flagship. We're also detecting extensive defensive installations throughout the system. Weapons platforms, minefields, sensor networks. The humans have had time to prepare. It won't matter. We outnumber them 5 to 1. All ships advance in formation. Target every human vessel. I want them wiped from existence. But on the bridge of the newly arrived Earth dreadnought Indomitable, Admiral Soman was smiling. She had brought everything Earth could spare. 37 additional warships, all of them upgraded with the technology the Velothi had shared. They had stronger shields now, better sensors, and weapons that could actually hurt the Krethic ships. More importantly, they had 3 weeks to prepare the battlefield. They're advancing, reported the tactical officer, maintaining tight formation just as we predicted. Good, Solomon said. Let them come. Activate the mines when they reach the marker. The Krethic fleet moved forward with absolute confidence. They had overwhelming numbers and superior technology. What could possibly go wrong? Everything went wrong at once. The asteroid field they were passing through suddenly lit up with explosions. Hundreds of nuclear mines hidden inside hollow asteroids detonated simultaneously. The blast wave caught the Krethic fleet completely by surprise. Shields flared and failed. Smaller ships were destroyed outright. The neat formation broke apart as vessels tried to escape the trap. All human ships open fire, Selman commanded. The Earth fleet emerged from behind Valara Prime's moon, their weapons already charged. They hit the disorganized Krethic fleet with everything they had. Railguns fired solid metal slugs at incredible speeds. Missiles streaked through space by the thousands. Laser batteries carved through damaged shields and exposed hulls. But the Krethic Empire hadn't conquered 50 systems by being weak. Despite their losses, they were still a massive fleet with powerful weapons. They returned fire with devastating effect. Plasma cannons turned space into a sea of green fire. Energy beams cut through human ships like knives through paper. The frigate Resolute took multiple hits and exploded, her reactor going critical. The destroyer Phoenix lost all power and began to drift. Across the human fleet, damage reports flooded in. They were hurting the enemy, but the enemy was hurting them just as badly. Lieutenant Mina was at her station on the Retribution, coordinating weapons fire with the other ships. Sweat dripped down her face as she worked the console, designating targets and launching missiles. Around her, the bridge crew worked with desperate efficiency. "Captain, the Krethic flagship is breaking through our lines," someone shouted. "It's heading straight for Valara Prime." Captain Doyen looked at the massive ship on his screen. The Dominion was almost a mile long and it had barely been scratched by their attacks. If it reached the planet, it could destroy everything in orbit and then burn the surface. Retribution intercept course. Put us between that ship and the planet. "Captain, we're already at 70% damage," Mina protested. "One direct hit from that monster and we're done. Then we better not let it hit us. All power to engines, now." The Retribution broke formation and accelerated toward the massive flagship. It was like a small fish swimming at a whale. The Dominion saw them coming and opened fire with every weapon it had. Space around the Retribution exploded with incoming fire. Mina worked frantically, launching countermeasures and trying to keep the shields balanced. A plasma bolt hit the port side, and the ship shook so hard people were thrown from their chairs. Another hit the forward section and the lights flickered. "Shields at 30%. Someone yelled. "We can't take another hit like that." But Doyen wasn't trying to fight the Dominion. He was trying to delay it. Every second the massive ship wasted on the Retribution was a second the planet had to prepare its defenses. Every shot it fired at them was a shot not fired at the civilians below. "Captain, our engines are failing," the engineering officer reported. "We're losing power across all systems." The Retribution began to drift, unable to maneuver anymore. The Dominion lined up for a killing shot. On the bridge, the crew prepared for the end. They had bought the planet a few precious minutes. It would have to be enough. Then something incredible happened. The Dominion stopped firing. Not because it wanted to. Because it couldn't. Its weapon systems had gone offline. "What just happened?" Mina asked in confusion. The answer came over the communication system. It was Sergeant Taeyang, and his voice was shaking with pain and exhaustion. "Captain, this is Taeyang. We boarded the flagship during the confusion. Lost most of my team, but we reached the weapons control center. We've disabled their main guns." "Taeyang, how did you even get on that ship?" "Long story, sir. Involved a damaged transport, a lot of luck, and some very angry Marines. We can't hold this position much longer. The Krethic are about to retake this section, but we bought you some time. Make it count." Doyen felt his throat tighten. Taeyang and his Marines had sacrificed themselves to save the Retribution and the planet. They were heroes, every single one of them. "All ships target the Dominion while its weapons are down. Hit it with everything." The entire human fleet focused their fire on the massive flagship. Without its shields and weapons, the Dominion was vulnerable. Explosions rippled across its hull. Secondary reactors detonated. The ship began to list. Bleeding atmosphere and crew into space. Supreme Admiral Krentax watched his flagship die around him and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. These humans weren't just fighting. They were willing to die to win. They were willing to sacrifice everything. "All ships emergency retreat," he ordered. "Fall back to the outer system." But Admiral Summon wasn't going to let them escape so easily. "Pursuit course. Don't let them regroup. Hit them while they're scattered." The human fleet chased the retreating Krethic ships, harassing them with long-range weapons. The disciplined retreat turned into a rout as Krethic ships broke formation to escape faster. Some were destroyed trying to jump to FTL too close to the planet's gravity well. Others were picked off by the pursuing human vessels. By the time the Krethic armada reached the edge of the system, they had lost 96 ships. Nearly half their fleet was destroyed or captured. It was the worst defeat in Krethic history, but the victory had cost Earth dearly. 19 human ships had been destroyed. The Retribution was so badly damaged it would never fly again. Thousands more humans had died, including Sergeant Taeyang and most of his Marine battalion. They had died as heroes, but they were still dead. Captain Doyen stood on what was left of his bridge, looking at the wreckage floating in space around them. So many good people gone, so much sacrifice. Admiral Soman's face appeared on a working screen. "Captain Doyen, you and your crew fought with incredible bravery today. Earth owes you a debt. We just did what needed to be done, Admiral. That's what makes it brave. Get your people to safety. We'll handle cleanup and recovery. The Krethic won't be back anytime soon." Down on Valera Prime, Elder Hyun watched the orbital battle end and wept openly. The humans had done it. They had faced impossible odds again and somehow won. Not through superior technology or numbers, but through sheer determination and willingness to sacrifice. He opened a communication to the human fleet. People of Earth, you have saved our world twice now. You have taught us the meaning of true courage. The Velathi will never forget what you have done. Your dead will be honored in our temples forever. Your names will be remembered in our songs for all time. Private Jiwoo, helping with rescue operations on the surface, heard the message and thought about Sergeant Taeyang. She had served under him for 2 years. He had a wife named Suman and 2 kids, a boy and a girl. They would grow up without their father, but they would know that he died saving an entire species. They would know their father was a hero. All across the human fleet, similar thoughts were being shared. The pain of loss mixed with the pride of victory. They had come to help strangers, and they had succeeded. The cost had been terrible, but they would pay it again if they had to. Because that's what humans did. When someone cried for help, they answered. No matter the distance, no matter the danger, no matter the cost. Earth had spoken, and the galaxy would never forget the sound. 6 months after the second battle of Valera Prime, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. In the Grand Council chambers of the Galactic Assembly, representatives from 300 species gathered to debate the most important question of their time: what to do about humanity. The assembly chamber was enormous, with floating platforms arranged in a spiral pattern around a central speaking floor. Each species had its own platform, decorated with the symbols and colors of their homeworld. At the very top, where the most powerful and ancient species sat, a new platform had been added. It was smaller than the others and still unpainted. It was waiting for Earth. Ambassador Borum stood on the speaking floor looking up at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at her. She was Earth's first official representative to the galaxy, and she was terrified. She had been a diplomat for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The Speaker of the Assembly, a being made of crystallized energy that called itself luminous, addressed her in a voice that echoed through every translator in the room. Representative of Earth, your species has caused considerable disruption to galactic order. You intervened in a conflict that was not your concern. You employed weapons and tactics that violate established conventions of warfare. You have made a powerful enemy of the Krethic Empire. Borum took a deep breath. With respect, Speaker, the Velathi sent a distress call. Someone had to answer it. The galaxy received that distress call, said a representative from the Quarren Collective, a species of insect-like creatures. We all heard the Velathi's plea. We chose not to intervene because the Krethic Empire is too powerful. Your species was foolish to make them your enemy. Then you chose wrong, Borum replied, her voice stronger now. The Velathi were being slaughtered. Their entire species was facing extinction, and you all just watched because you were afraid. That's not civilization, that's cowardice. The chamber erupted in angry clicks, hisses, and electronic sounds. Several species began shouting at once, demanding that Earth be sanctioned for such disrespect. But there were others who remained silent, considering her words. The representative from the Velathi people stood on their platform. Elder Hyun had been given a seat in the assembly after his species' near extinction brought attention to their plight. His voice was calm but firm. The human speaks truth. My people called for help and the galaxy abandoned us. Only Earth answered. Only Earth was willing to sacrifice their own people to save strangers. If that is foolishness, then I pray the galaxy becomes more foolish. Another voice joined in. This one from a species called the Tauren, who looked like large amphibians. The Krethic Empire has conquered 43 of our colony worlds over the past century. We have watched them grow stronger while the Assembly does nothing but debate and discuss. Perhaps Earth's methods are harsh, but they are effective. For the first time in living memory, the Krethic have been defeated. Twice. The debate continued for hours. Some species argued that Earth was too violent and dangerous to join the galactic community. Others argued that Earth had proven themselves worthy by defending the helpless. But everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity could no longer be ignored. Finally, Speaker Luminous called for a vote. The question before this assembly is simple. Do we invite Earth to join us as equals with all the rights and responsibilities that entails? The vote was close, but ultimately the decision was made. Earth was invited to join the Galactic Assembly. The small, unpainted platform began to glow with a soft blue light. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. Back on Earth, the news was celebrated with parades and festivals. But for those who had fought at Valara Prime, the feeling was more complicated. Lieutenant Mina stood in the memorial garden in Geneva, looking at the wall of names. Thousands of them carved in stone, every person who had died in the 2 battles. Every sacrifice that had brought them to this moment. She found Sergeant Taeyang's name near the middle of the wall. Someone had left flowers beneath it, probably his widow Sumin. Mina placed her hand on the carved letters and whispered, "We did it, Sergeant. Earth is part of the galaxy now. I hope that's enough." "It's enough." Mina turned to see Captain Doyen standing behind her. He had been promoted to Admiral after the battle, but he still looked the same. Tired, scarred, but determined. "I didn't hear you arrive, Admiral." "I come here often," Doyen admitted. "I need to remember what we're fighting for. What they died for. Do you think we'll have to fight again?" "Probably. The galaxy is dangerous and there are a lot of species like the Krethic out there. But next time we won't be alone. The Velothi have pledged to stand with us. The Tauren want to form a defense pact. Others are watching to see what we do next." Mina smiled slightly. "No pressure then. We'll manage. We always do." On Valara Prime, the rebuilding continued. The scars of the Krethic attack would take decades to fully heal, but the Velothi were resilient. With human and galactic aid, their cities were rising from the ashes. New defense platforms orbited the planet, staffed by both Velothi and human crews working together. Private Jiwoo had stayed on Valara Prime after the battle, choosing to help with the reconstruction effort rather than return to Earth. She had grown close to the Velothi people, especially the children she had saved from the ruins. One of them, a girl named Lyra, followed Jiwoo everywhere, learning human language and culture. "Teacher Jiwoo," Lyra asked one day as they worked in a community garden, "why did your people come to save us? We had nothing to offer you." Jiwoo thought about the question carefully. "We came because you asked for help, and because we believe that if you can help someone, you should. It's as simple as that. The galaxy does not work that way. Most species only help when there is profit or advantage. Then maybe we'll teach the galaxy a better way." Lyra smiled, her large dark eyes shining with hope. "I would like that very much." In the Krethic Empire, the defeat at Valara Prime had caused massive political upheaval. Supreme Admiral Krentex had been executed for his failure, and the military was in chaos. For the first time in their history, the Krethic had learned the meaning of fear. They had always been the predators, the conquerors. Now they knew what it felt like to be prey. The new Supreme Admiral, a younger Krethic named Thexvor, studied reports about humanity obsessively. He watched recordings of the battles, analyzed human tactics, and tried to understand what made them so dangerous. The conclusion he reached was terrifying. Humans didn't fight to win. They fought to protect, and that made them unstoppable. You could defeat an army fighting for conquest. You could break a fleet fighting for glory. But how did you defeat someone fighting to save the innocent? How did you stop someone willing to die for strangers? Thexvor made a decision that would have been unthinkable a year ago. The Krethic Empire withdrew from Velothi space completely. They also withdrew from a dozen other contested systems, pulling their fleets back to their core territories. The galaxy watched in shock as the unstoppable conquerors retreated behind their borders. The message was clear. The Krethic Empire wanted no further conflict with humanity. 1 year after the first distress call, a ceremony was held on Valara Prime. Humans and Velothi gathered in the rebuilt capital city to dedicate a monument to those who had fallen. The monument was simple but powerful. A massive stone carved with the names of every human who had died saving the Velothi people. At the base was a plaque with a single sentence in both languages. One cry for help was all it took. Earth answered with fire. Admiral Soman attended the ceremony along with Ambassador Borum, Captain Doyen, and hundreds of others. The Velothi had invited representatives from across the galaxy, and many had come. Everyone wanted to see the monument to the species that had changed everything. Elder Hyun spoke to the gathered crowd, his voice amplified so everyone could hear. "A year ago, my people were dying. We sent a message into the void, not knowing if anyone would hear it, not expecting anyone to care. We were wrong. Earth heard us. Earth cared, and Earth came." He paused, looking at the human representatives. The humans like to say they did nothing special. They say they simply did what anyone should do. But that is not true. They did something extraordinary. They risked everything for people they had never met. They fought impossible battles and paid terrible prices. They showed the galaxy what true courage looks like. Jan turned back to the monument, placing his hand on the cold stone. These names represent the best of what life can be: selflessness, compassion, bravery. The Velati will remember them forever. We will teach our children about them. We will tell stories about them for 10,000 generations, and we will try every day to be worthy of their sacrifice. Admiral Soman stepped forward to speak next. She looked out at the crowd, seeing humans and aliens standing together, and felt a sense of pride she couldn't quite describe. The people named on this monument were heroes, she said, but they were also just ordinary men and women who made an extraordinary choice. When they heard someone calling for help, they answered. That's what humanity does. That's who we are. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. The galaxy is full of powerful species with advanced technology and ancient wisdom. Earth has none of those advantages. What we do have is a simple belief. We believe that every life has value. We believe that protecting the innocent is worth any cost. We believe that when someone asks for help, you help them. Someone looked directly at the cameras that were broadcasting the ceremony across the galaxy. To every species watching this, we make you a promise. If you cry for help, Earth will answer. We may not always win. We may lose ships and lives. But we will come. That is our pledge to the galaxy. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence for the fallen. As the sun set on Valara Prime, casting long shadows across the monument, something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. Earth was no longer an unknown primitive species. They were the defenders, the protectors, the ones who answered the call. In the weeks and months that followed, Earth began receiving messages from across the galaxy. Some were requests for alliances. Others were pleas for help from species facing their own crises. A few were warnings from enemies who saw humanity as a threat to their power. But Earth's response never changed. They evaluated each request carefully, and when they could help, they did. Not for profit or political gain, but because someone had asked and they could make a difference. The Galactic Assembly watched this pattern repeat and slowly began to understand. Humanity wasn't trying to build an empire. They weren't seeking to conquer or dominate. They were simply living according to their values, even when it was difficult, even when it cost them greatly, and slowly other species began to follow their example. The Velathi, inspired by their saviors, began offering aid to other struggling worlds. The Tauren formed a defense force to protect vulnerable systems. Even some members of the Quarren Collective started questioning whether their policy of non-intervention was truly the right path. Humanity had sparked something in the galaxy, a reminder of what civilization could be at its best, not just advanced technology and efficient government, but genuine compassion and willingness to sacrifice for others. Years later, historians would point to the distress call from Valara Prime as the moment that changed galactic history. One desperate message from a dying world, answered by a species no one had heard of, that somehow shifted the course of an entire galaxy. It started with a simple cry for help, and Earth, against all logic and reason, had answered with fire. Not the fire of destruction, but the fire of determination. The fire that said, "We see you, we hear you, and we're coming to help." The galaxy would never be the same. And humanity, they were just getting started. In the memorial garden on Earth, new names would be added over the years as humanity continued to answer calls for help. But the first names, the ones from Valara Prime, would always hold a special place. They were the pioneers who proved that Earth's values weren't just words. They were principles worth dying for. And in dying, they had given the galaxy something it desperately needed. Hope. Hope that somewhere out there, someone cared. Hope that the strong could choose to protect the weak. Hope that in the cold darkness of space there was still light. One cry for help was all it took. Earth answered with fire, and the universe became a better place because of it.